All right, good morning. I'm excited for today. Are you excited for today? Hopefully a little. Some of you have a little bit of a like, maybe not so much, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll talk a lot about kind of how we're going to do this and all that stuff. But did everyone have a good weekend before we get into this? It was cool for like 2 days. It was so nice, and now it's going to be hot again. I would much rather have cooler weather than hot weather, and yeah, but we'll see. We got to be getting closer. I mean, the ice lattes are out, so it's fall, right? Technically. I'm like, I even have Halloween on my block, and house is decorated. My whole house is ready for fall, even if it's not quite there. Anyway, I'm gonna hand this around. So this is our attendance sheet. If I'm no longer gonna take attendance, I'm just gonna give it out. You can initial it or sign it. If you want your name to be something else, just mark it on there and I'll update it for next week. But if your name isn't on that page, it means you're not in the class. So just make sure you touch base with me. I just printed that just a minute ago. So if you aren't on there, come check in with me after. It's not worth points, but it does help me keep track of who's here. So please sign in each day. That way, if there's ever a discrepancy or we need to know if you were here, I can know. But I'll hand that out from here on out. No more attendance, which is I think is kind of nice. We get those like 3 minutes back for much more exciting things. So what I want to have you do is I'm going to have you get back into your groups. Okay, and hopefully most of you are here, if not all of you. But I want you to get back into your groups, and I'm going to give you maybe like 5 minutes or so as a group. I'd like you to make sure that all of the questions that you are going to ask are written down, that you're organized and kind of have everything put together. And I want you as a group to talk a little bit about how you're going to approach this. So what I mean by that is when you go out into the world, when I send you out, and we'll talk more about that again, not every single one of you has to ask the question. So depending on how many of you have in a group, you might have one person ask, one person record, and you can have one person stand back and observe if somebody wants to do that. That's kind of interesting too, and a little bit of safety in that if you're feeling overwhelmed, because the dynamics of everything are interesting information as well. So kind of decide who's going to do what in your group, finalize everything, make sure that you have a specific question or like order of questions that you're going to ask. And then finally, make sure that you know how you're going to record your data. So when you go up to somebody and ask them questions, how are you going to write that down? How are you going to write that in a way that makes sense to you or is meaningful? So get into your groups, spend about 5 minutes doing this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some ground rules and plans before we jump in.
And I think for sure. Yeah. But I definitely think in order to know,
Oh, I don't, I don't, it looks like someone left a local, if you could, that if you wanted to. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. All right.
Maybe the first. You know, and I'm. It's grabbed from my stack. Yeah, they don't really like that. All right, and then at 8, Andy, yeah. What's that? Oh, like, and then, oh, so. Really great. So books for me, I don't think you have. Yeah. 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 Are you gonna write it down? Well, we're gonna practice it. No, I can sure a long time. Sorry, I work at a startup. Well, don't worry. I probably wouldn't even know which one you're talking about either. No, they want to ready. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, you can watch.
Give me a couple more minutes and then we'll talk, a little more.
Oh, 6. What's our, like, you know, how psychology, they have different ones, like, 01,
Yeah.
whatever. Actually, I'm actually not. I mean, like, but like. You might get rid of the novel, you have it sometimes, like, I'm not like. I'm not dying. Yeah. Do they have breathing? Yes, some of them do. I think what I've done, so they just use like at my lawn, they're all in there. And I'm like, oh my god, and I still. Like how. But like, no, wait, it's so funny. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I feel like she's good for it.
What did I get? Thank you. I don't know how ever turned out. Should we not? I don't know how. Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm almost done. I'm just. Yeah. So you said you don't want to. Okay, I watched it. Oh my god. No, maybe. Can we talk a little bit more? We can talk about, right?
Everybody feeling got your questions, everything good? Okay, let me- Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. In a minute, in a couple of minutes, I'm gonna send you out into the world, right, onto our campus. And you're going to be asking these questions to other people on this campus. Now, some ground rules. There are a few. I've gotten in trouble for this once, just once, but that's because somebody went into a classroom. I didn't think I needed to specify that, so I will specify that. Please don't go into a classroom, right? That is in session. What I want you to do is you're gonna go out and you can approach people that are walking, that are sitting, that are out and about. It can be students, faculty, whoever you run across, right? You are welcome to ask them, but please don't go into any classrooms. If somebody says no, like, by all means, that's okay. Let them be, right? So what I'd like you to do is think of some kind of statement that you want to start with. Don't just walk up to somebody and be like, how often do you masturbate? Right? No. So I'm in a human sexuality class. I'm doing some research. Would you be willing to answer a couple of questions? Something like that, right? Give them a little bit so they feel like this is something legitimate instead of just random and odd. So I'm in a class, I'm in a human sexuality class. We're doing a little experiment. We're asking some questions. Would you be willing, right? And if they say no, that's interesting information too. Record that and move on, okay? You might run into people who've been asked more than one, by more than one group. That's okay. Again, information. So what I want to do, just so that we don't all go to the same place, just and bombard the one person sitting there or whatnot, right? Poor one person gets everybody. Everybody, all of you surround them, right? Until they cave. No, I'm just kidding. What I have is a couple of different places around here. And what I want this to be is like your home area. If you don't run into anyone or you don't see anyone, you can kind of wander from there, but have that be kind of your core area that you try and find people at. So we have several different groups. So as our group would be willing to use the Performing Arts building as their like home base. Everyone, okay, great. So that's that building right over here. Again, start there and you can kind of go from there. How about the cafeteria? Okay, your group, the bookstore. You want bookstore? Okay, great. Anyone want to go down the hill toward the academic center? I mean, I wouldn't because then you have to walk, but anyone want to go down the hill? We can skip that one for a moment, but how about Fountain Hall? Okay, Fountain Hall, with this group here is Fountain Hall, the library. Okay, so let's do like the first floor and then the second floor of the library, right? There was, or did you already have one? Okay, second floor of the library. Anyone not have a spot yet? Okay, so how about, you can still go up and ask, just be quiet, but how about we kind of like your home area and then, second floor for you. And you can ask people outside the library. Anybody not have an area? Okay, so, how about this building? And then, how about you don't have one either? So Greater Walk. Okay, so the whole like long walkway out here. Yeah.
Are we confined to that?
No, so I just want that to be like your primary zone, just so that we don't all go to Fountain Hall, right, and harass everyone there. So use your area as like your primary space, but you're welcome to wander. Again, big things, right? Make sure you preface what you're doing, ask for consent in a way, right? Are they willing to do this or not? And make sure you're recording your information, right? When you come back, I'm going to have a couple of questions up for you that I want you to kind of think about and jot down some bullets as a group. And that's what you're going to turn into me for credit for doing this. So there's a couple of things that I want you to think about when you come back, and I'll have this up. The other thing, I'm going to stay here like outside of the room and kind of watch. So you're welcome to leave your stuff in here. I'll be right outside the door, or you can take it with you if you would rather. Let's be back here. Please be mindful of the time, just so we have time to talk about it. I want to hear about it. I'd be so sad if we didn't have time. So I'm going to give you 30 minutes. Okay, so if you could try to be back here at 10:45, that would be ideal. Then we have time to kind of jot stuff down and talk about it. I'm like, it was sad sending you up, but excited sending you up. Like, I can't wait to hear what you find out. Good luck. I hope you have lots of people and get out. No, I'm just kidding. All right, good luck. I'll see you in 30 minutes. 30 minutes. In.
Need one on one paper or two?
It's up to you. You could just put it on one paper for all of you, but just think about part 3 down here. Welcome back.
Okay.
So as a group, jot down some notes on the part 3 that we submitted in the term. Get some people? Welcome back. So as a group, jot down some thoughts on part 3 on a piece of paper that you're going to do. Rolled it beautifully with your tongue. Thank you. Okay. Here, look at the results. Now make sure you write all your first and last names on whatever paper you're turning in so I can credit it. Yeah.
What is Sam?
So did you have any issues with like the people that you went to ask, like that would be your sample, right? So not as a group that you wanted, as a group that you didn't want. I have no issues with like the stuff we talked about last. Welcome back. And then as a group, I'll try to make off for enough time. You want to take the all the need. So I think people will get it. Welcome back. I know, right? Nice to meet you. Yeah. So have a group jot down some thoughts for part 3, which I don't have piece of paper that you can turn in about.
Does anybody want candy? No, I don't want all of this. Does anybody want this? Please. You want it? Please. Wait, it's like 90, please. Go crazy. Crazy. I don't know. Oh, no matter.
Take candy from the trainer.
Yeah. All my dad, not what it was. Yeah.
Answer questions about your sexuality.
Yes. Yeah. No, exactly.
They tell you. That's the first 2 things they say.
Yeah. I'm glad I could put some things on your list too.
Merry Christmas.
What do I got? Oh,
Happy
no,
holidays.
don't leave it with me. I'll leave it. Like if you leave me unsupervised with candy, it'll go poorly. All right, so I know I think it's works to all of you, but take a moment, just like a couple of minutes, same for all of you, as a group on a piece of paper, just jot down, it can be bullets, but just a couple of notes about these things. And then in a few minutes, we'll talk about it together, so I can hear how it went. So put all your names on the piece of paper, you are turning it in to get points. First and last name.
Just honestly, fair. I don't know if that one. I need a volunteer. I need a volunteer. An icon. No, I think it's like how you figure out what is your sexuality?
Question mark.
No, right.
That's awesome.
I think yeah. And then we have,
Okay.
They're 50-50 yes and no if they're, there's somebody that's like in there. Well, they have a great question.
I think you get like 2 more minutes and then we can talk about it together, like 2 more minutes.
And 12, no.
You know, we don't need to like break down our data specifically, but we're just answering. And then I can just write down what we're saying.
Like, I thought it was gonna be, no, like. I mean, like, it's good to it. Yeah, it's like, probably. I was kind of like, oh, I didn't oh, that's the guy that I was talking to, kind of like sexual orientation, and I'm not gonna lie.
They didn't know what that was.
It kind of threw me off guard, so I was like, I don't know.
Alright, so let me bring it back to guys here, because I'm absolutely dying to hear how it went and I can't wait anymore. As a group, to make sure before you end today that you have all your first and last names on there, that's what you're turning into me to get credit for that activity. Okay, so just so that housekeeping thing there. But what I wanted to do, I want to go around. So somebody from your group be willing to kind of share, what did you want to know? Like, what were your questions? And just give us like a really quick overview of how it went. Okay, and we could talk a little bit more about details in a moment, but what did you want to know? And like a little, like, just quick overview, right? Anyone wanna start? Like, what did your group wanna know? This should be less intimidating, I hope, right? Yeah.
So our group basically asked people, like, if their parents didn't talk about sex,
Okay,
and, if they didn't, then like, what was the outlet that they found out about sex? And then, yeah, and so if they didn't, then we asked them like, what was that outlet? And so usually the common answer was no, their parents didn't tell them anything really. And they found out in mainly middle school.
okay,
Like living with school friends or like talks about like, I guess like the birds and bees talk that you get in like 5th or 6th grade
sure.
or 7th grade. But yeah, and so then we also asked like the age, obviously, and then we asked everybody's gender and sexuality. And I guess like apart from these questions, the sampling this year, we had this like the convenience of the questions that were asked, like everything was very biased, probably because they're mainly asking college students.
Yeah,
And depending on like the age and the year that they were in middle school, I guess the outlets back then, like those kids were less likely to have their parents talking about things. And so let's say we sampled maybe somebody that's near like my parents' age, which is like they grew up in the 80s. Like,
Yes.
I think that their parents probably gave them the talk
Let's keep it down just so we're not.
rather than like finding out through school friends and experience.
Okay.
And then also that would also like limit people. We had one specific person tell them that they found out everything online, and then their parents were like, "Hey, do you know about this?" And then they were like, "Yeah, I know." And then their parents said like, "Okay, then we don't need to talk about it."
Interesting, and I find it super relevant for my personal life, because I have a middle schooler in 7th grade, and we like over the weekend, she's like, "Are we ever gonna have that talk?" And I was like, "What talk?" She's like, "You know, the one talk," and I was guy about it, and I was like, "Do you want to have a talk?" And she's like, maybe. I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's do it." Like, so we've been putting it off. Like, so interesting, okay, really interesting, and I love that you were thinking about some of the issues too. Who wants to go? Who wants to go next? Yeah, thank you, and then we'll come over here.
So we did how you most often use oriented partners. And then for our demographic question, we asked how old were they, where are you from, where's your ethnic background, and what's your gender.
Okay, okay,
Overall, so we asked people between 17 and 47. Most of our answers were from females instead of men.
okay.
A lot of people were saying like, no, I don't.
Back there, sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Check, great, tink you, I can hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
People said they don't need romantic partners, like as a whole, but they were saying that they were going to, they would be like back to school. People also said like out socializing, so like around school, or like out at clubs and stuff.
Interesting, okay, that's really like interesting information, like, great, and then I think we said over here next, right? So what do you wanna know, just kind of a little overview?
We wanted to know, like, I guess the differences in how people like would describe sex, like personally for them.
Okay,
Depend, like, I guess we were thinking that it would be different for depending on your sexuality, depending on like how you identify.
okay,
I think the most difficult thing was that we were all out there. So we didn't want to kind of, what I said earlier is double dip, because I feel like that, like if I was that person getting asked the question, I would get annoyed if I kept getting asked from different groups.
sure,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and so I kind of felt bad because I don't know, I just didn't want to be annoying, I guess. And then
Mhm.
another problem is we used a QR code, which we thought would be easier, but I think a lot of people were scanning it and not actually doing it. Because we were trying to make it more convenient and more like anonymous for them, so they didn't feel so like pressured or like
yeah.
they could answer it honestly, but I think it kind of like backfired because
Yeah, so like they pretended to do it, but they
I
were,
think so.
they're like, yeah, let me answer those questions.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, but I love the idea with that, like a little bit of, like, not so much pressure of having to answer it out loud is a great idea. But then you run into the issue with it, right? Oh, it's always the double-sided. Interesting.
A lot of people did say yes and scanned it, but like I said, I don't think they actually did it.
Interesting, okay, they saw the first question, like, forget it.
Asked maybe like 5 or 6 people, and then like 10 minutes later we checked in, there was only one.
Okay, interesting, interesting. All right, who wants to go next? We got a few more groups, we'll go here and then back there, yeah.
Our main question was how people were when they first masturbated, but
Okay.
then like we had like questions before that, like we asked like sex, age, sexual orientation, religion, relationship status, and then our main questions were how old they were when they got the sex talk. And then we also asked when they made like the mental and physical connection about like sex for themselves.
Okay,
And we also asked for the girls when they got their first period and for the guys when they got their first boner. But we thought that like the period question would be like, oh, like when did you like go through puberty? But I noticed like looking through this just now that for the guys, like for the last 4 questions, like sex talk, like boner, physical, mental connection, and masturbation, it was like pretty much close in age. But for the
Interesting.
girls, the like start of the period did not match up
didn't match up.
at all.
You got a lot of.
Yeah.
uh-huh.
So for religious, their age was still a lot lower, but then for the girls, like when we asked if they were religious, the age was still a lot higher.
Hmm.
And I think religion like
Played a role.
plays a role in it.
Yeah,
I just thought that was like an interesting like consistency that we saw
sure.
as well.
And for, we interviewed 3 guys and 5 girls, and for all of them, the guys' ages for the last 4 questions was all like, I'd say like 2 to 5 years younger than the girls.
Okay, so seeing those things a little
Yeah,
earlier.
that's like kind of like what we went in with, like, we want to see if there was like a big difference, and like, we only interviewed 8 people, but there kind of was.
But there was in those eight.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that, right? And a lot of interesting information. Okay, next, yeah.
Okay, so our survey is kind of based more clinical, kind of how you talk to your doctor and what you think about sex in general, and how open you were to talk to them.
Okay.
So, like, you asked one question, how sex benefits humans. One question was how sex can benefit heart health, right? No one put down anything for that question.
I feel like a good pickup line. Come on, it's good for your heart.
Our things are all through a QR code, so it was
Okay.
pretty easy. I got 18 people to answer for. Most people said it improves stress and anxiety and
Okay.
stuff to do with love in general. A lot of other people, another question was tied to how they deal with it, related. Do you need somebody who not do something? Most people, like, I guess like 2/3 people found out, I really don't need to be with somebody to actually have a good sex relationship.
Okay.
I don't need to be in a relationship. And I didn't. And our third question is, would you talk about the provider about your sex relations? 0 people said this is a very big problem, so it depends, if the problem is bad, they're not gonna talk about it. 11% trusted their provider, they were talking about that. 70% said they wouldn't talk to them because they were embarrassed.
Okay.
And, another 60%, they were concerned about privacy, talking to their provider. So, ours more clinical based kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like interesting information though, and I love that you have like percentages, that makes me excited.
Yeah.
I get excited about correlations and percentages. Okay, wonderful, okay. Sorry, do you have a little bit more?
Well, our problem was though, I was trying to aim for a more broader spectrum crowd, but
Yeah.
you couldn't really find many people over 20 or 30, so.
Yeah, you're stuck with what you have.
Yeah, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you. There's a couple other groups. Yeah, we'll go here and then, yeah.
So we asked 2 questions. We said on a scale of 1 to 10, like how emotionally connected do you have to be with engagement with intimacy?
Okay.
And the ranges on that, and most people were saying like, we got from 6 to 10s, and most people were saying 10s.
Okay.
And like, I think
10 is in like all the way to
10 is
okay.
okay. Yeah.
Yep.
And then we definitely have sampling issues probably, because a lot of people were like younger, like 18, and assuming that. So people would be
Sure.
And then the second question said were, would you rather this kind of like be a big long relationship or more short ones? And those were most people said long. And we got
But definitely dealing with that same convenience, which I would assume would be an issue for everyone, right? I'm just kind of with whatever we need, right? Thank you, and it's your hand
Yeah.
next.
Okay, so we had asked, of course, Asian sex, but then also if they've had sex, and if so, have they had an orgasm during sex?
Oh.
So surprisingly, a lot of people said no to even having sex, so it was kind of hard to like get like from the small.
It kind of shuts down your
Yeah,
follow-up
because a lot of
question.
them said no, and then, of the people that did say yes, there are 7, but only 4 said yes to orgasm during sex.
Okay,
There was like a few girls that we asked, and they got like really shy and like, oh.
Sure.
Or like a lot of them too, were like, oh, we already got asked, and like, it's different, and they're like.
we're done one, we're done.
Yeah, but the other thing too, the people that did say yes to both were a little older. So I
Okay,
feel like if we would have narrowed it down to like a certain age category as well, like that maybe would have made the results a little bit more like clear. Cause the age difference, like 30-year-old compared to like 18, which is kind of like really. But that too, like the people that did say yes were older, so I feel like that could tell you something also. But yeah, we were just surprised that a lot of people were saying no to like. Sex.
okay,
But then also, like, some people were with other people and like in groups, so I feel like maybe they were embarrassed, so they
Sure.
lied of either one. So yeah, it was kind of like really personal, so I feel like for the results to be super accurate is kind of like hard.
okay. Interesting though, right?
Yeah.
They're all interesting. I love this. I feel like we still have 1 or 2 more groups. Anybody else, right? Yep, okay.
So our question overall was, would you be the trans person? I hear it's pretty pertinent in the current like political scene.
Mhm.
Of things happening right now. So we were asking what your political alignment was, what religion you identify with. Sexual orientation, your age range, relationship status, gender identity, and the question which is literature.
Yeah.
And found that a lot of people identify as liberal, but we did have a majority of people identify as conservative, and or not the majority, sorry, the majority of people identify as, but a good group of people also identify as conservative. People who are Christian and straights, would usually not date someone who's trans. Most people who identified as straight refuse to, like, no, I would not, that's gay. Like,
Okay.
Don't do that, not same gender as me. And the majority of people were already in a relationship, that was interesting. They still would answer regardless, yes, I would date a person, no, I would not date a person. The majority of people did answer yes, they would date a person.
Okay, interesting. I like that you got a good like variety, right? It's nice. It's nice to get good variety. Is there one more group that your group got up with? You already. You did, right? Oh, yeah, you started earlier. Did I get everybody? I think so. Okay, so overall, I mean, it sounds like nobody, like none of you have ran into a situation where like you didn't get people, so that's fantastic. How many of you had somebody say no? By show of hands, did anyone say no? Okay, so interesting. Any comments about people who said no? Any thoughts there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, they're like, I gotta go, right? Okay. Interesting. Okay, that's practical. All right, yeah. They're like, no, please don't bother me.
There's like 3 people like sitting next to them, so.
Okay, that's fair, right? Right there, pounding on the wall, they're angry over there, right? How about, somebody over here, I think it was you who mentioned that they were in a group and that might have influenced it. How many of you felt like maybe your group or them being in a group or individually kind of shaped like whether they answered or not? Any like thoughts or comments about that? Yeah.
We actually start
That's way back. I was wondering. You're like, here's a reward for answering. That's smart. Okay.
So then that way, here, let me stare at you while you fill out a form.
Sure.
Because like that would make you nervous.
Okay.
But so actually us separating, we got a lot more people. But,
Yeah.
I think 4 people like,
Right, tell me if you would date a trans person. Okay, interesting, and I love that you had like a motivator, a lot of research, and that wasn't necessary, but it's interesting how that can work. A lot of research studies, you get $5, get a gift card, get this if you participate, because our time is valuable, right? Sometimes people need a little motivation. Yes, did you have a?
I was just gonna say, the reason I was late, right, was because, the group that I was trying to get them to answer the questions actually kind of threw the question back at me.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, it threw me off because I wasn't expecting it to
This
have
isn't
to
about me.
It's like, sure, and then well, because our question obviously is like, we made it to where it's supposed to be confidential and like anonymous.
Yeah.
So when I answered the question, because I was like, yeah, I'll answer the question, and then I immediately like got hot and embarrassed, and I was like, oh, gotta go.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was
I have to be back right now.
No, actually, I was like, my
Yeah.
record already left, I, go. It was very uncomfortable though,
Yeah,
very uncomfortable, but I guess I put into perspective how uncomfortable it is for them to answer our questions.
sure. Right, to have them throw it back at you like that. I can imagine that could catch you off guard. Yes.
Some guy had answered our question and it was like, they were like, okay, thank you. They're like, oh, the other gonna be candy. And we're like,
Right? I had somebody last semester who was like, they wouldn't answer unless I gave them my phone number, so I moved on. I was like, oh, bye. Smart to move on, I suppose. How many of you feel like you were lied to at some point? Like your hunch was that they were lying to you? Anybody have that moment where you're like, I don't think they're being honest?
I mean, when they said that they were gonna take a survey.
Well, yeah, so you had a unique situation in that they said they would do it and then didn't. But, so hands went up here, did you have a moment where you feel like they lied to you or somebody wasn't being truthful?
We had lying, but the guy was like, yeah, and then I was like, okay, so have you had an orgasm? Sure.
Sure.
I was like, okay.
Probably, right, yeah, okay. So kind of dismissive, hard to know if it was accurate or not. Did any of you run into issues where people didn't know? Like they didn't know what the term was, or they didn't know how to define it, or like they were confused? Yeah.
Yeah, like, the majority of people didn't know what sexual orientation.
Yeah, what's that about?
Literally
Yeah.
6 out of the 8 people didn't
6
know.
out of 8.
Yeah.
They had one,
What is that?
we asked, we were like,
People
oh, what's your
just
sexual orientation? It was like,
Male. After sex, and then the next question, he was like, man, I was like, we already asked that.
Still male, right? So it's interesting, and it might be because we're in a human sexuality class. Like, in my mind, it feels like such a common thing. Orientation, right? We're gonna talk about it in a few weeks. It feels so common sense, okay, like gay, straight, bi, asexual, like there's common orientations, and then there's a whole like million varieties, right? But you would think that would be something people know. Shockingly, not always.
at least two of them, like.
Yeah, at least two. Okay, if they actually answered it, right? Yeah.
Also, I'm pretty sure the only, everyone, like 7 out of 8 people we interviewed were straight, and there was only one straight dude who knew what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's so interesting to me. Yeah.
I heard right then, yeah. Put down like a list of
Yeah.
like cis man, born male, like an explanation for each of the things. So cis man, trans man, cis woman, trans woman, not binary, and then someone just entered in the extra thing, just like female. And there you go. That's one of the options.
Yeah. Right, and yours, like you're getting at a bunch of gender identities that people might not know. I mean, so you might not know what cisgender versus non-binary is.
Which is why I put down like
Yeah.
an explanation for each of the things that they sort of went in, because the other option and typed in their own thing.
Yeah.
Already.
Right. Interesting, yeah.
They assumed that, like, straight was the sexual orientation that applied to that.
Okay, so
So,
there's the assumption that they go
Yeah.
together.
like, I remember one person asked, and I think they said male, and then they just assumed that I was gonna assume straight as well, and I was just like. I'm like, I was like, that's a weird question.
Right, I'm gonna wait, right? Yeah, and it's tricky, and as we were meeting last class, I told a bunch of groups, like, make sure that you have a definition in mind, right? Because sometimes people don't know, like, we tend to think, being on a college campus especially, that people would know, but gender, orientation, like, and the specifics of them, somebody might not know, right? Yeah,
So we forgot to keep track of how many people actually scanned it.
Okay.
So I realized that like, when I-
25%.
yeah, so
Scanned it.
I
Uh-huh.
went into the website that like, there was a QR code generator or whatever that I
Yeah.
put a link into. 25 people scanned it
okay,
and we only got, how many responses?
It was 6,
6.
24% of the people.
interesting.
actually-
Yeah, right. And again, sexuality makes people uncomfortable, right? And like, I love that you were like, they turned it back on me. I'm like, "Ah," like, I even had that moment. Like, I had a moment like that. I think it was like 2 years ago we were doing this. And a group was like, can I ask you? And I'm super open, but it made me uncomfortable. Like, you're my student asking me about masturbation. Like, I felt awkward. I felt awkward answering it because it wasn't anonymous, right? It was like my personal sexuality was put out there, right? And so sometimes people say no, sometimes people lie, or you have to wonder if they're like, oh, sure, maybe, right? Or they don't know. All of those things are gonna affect your results. How many of you feel like you actually answered the question? Like you got a meaningful answer to what you wanted to know? You don't feel like you got a pretty meaningful answer? Mostly, I say a lot of you mostly. I think that's great, right? And again, this was like a small sample of convenience. Can you imagine if you had like months to do this and you could get people from all over the place? Like people do this for a living. If you love this, you could do it for a living, right? It's definitely an option. Any other like interesting bits or like pieces of information? Yeah.
Well, we were just talking about how like a lot of people are uncomfortable, and the majority of people were like, like I don't want to. This
Sure.
one dude, he like went into
Oh, yeah.
detail. Like he answered questions that we didn't even ask him.
You're like, I don't need to know that.
But he was like in my opinion, the best person we interviewed. But
Sure.
he went into detail about the questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. So you had
It's
some
like,
who were
I don't think
embarrassed
it's
and wanted to
too
get into it.
personal. Yeah, we're like, no,
And
please.
proceeded to get very personal.
Okay.
Like, great.
Right, thank you for that.
I didn't write down the details that I didn't share.
It's what I needed to know. Anybody else? Any other like little interesting things in our last couple of minutes? Okay, so 2 things. First, I would like to thank you all for being so into this, right? I know that it can be a little intimidating. You survived it. We won't do it again. That was it. But I think it's a really good lesson, right? Again, there are so many issues. If I go back here, give me like 1 more minute and then we'll be done here. if we go back here, remember all these issues that we talked about? You ran into these and more, right? So many more. And so when people do sex research, it's often flawed for all of the reasons you experience and even more of them, right? So I'm glad that you got meaningful answers or maybe even too much information at once. Before you leave today, make sure that you have a sheet of paper with your names on it because that's how I'm gonna give you points. If you want to email me any other responses or results, you are more than welcome to, but it's not required, or you can give them to me, that's totally fine. And make sure you signed in on the attendance sheet, which you could just bring up when you come up. Okay, so next class, we will move on to chapter 4. We're skipping chapter 3. So chapter 4 when I see you on Wednesday. So thank you. I'll see you all on Wednesday, and don't forget to turn that in.
Pleasure.